Hello everyone. First of all, let me introduce our group. We are from group 7 and here we are going to present about understanding Old English and varieties of Old English. My name is Firda Ayu Nirmala with the last student number 033, and then there is Maulidiyah Nur with the last student number 037, and then there is Nadia Aliya Rahma with the last student number 034, and then there is Nafilah Sofie Maulydia with the last student number 035, and then there is Grace Laura Christy with the last student number 036. Let's start.
Okay, hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nafilah Maulydia with student number 035. In here, I will explain about spelling and sound in Old English. An Old English term could sound very much like its contemporary English counterpart. Finding out the meaning of a certain Old English word may often be made easier by knowing how to speak the language. Although a term may not seem familiar, it may sound very much like its contemporary English counterpart. For instance, we may determine the meaning of the word Anglo-Saxon by pronouncing it as it would have been during the Anglo-Saxon era. As a result, taking the effort to learn how to speak Old English is worthwhile. Knowing the sound that each letter of the Old English alphabet represents is necessary to pronounce Old English word. A graph is a single letter that represents a single phoneme. For instance, the graph in Old English stands for the phoneme m. Each phoneme is represented by a two-letter combination known as a digraph. In the first, we are in here Old English vowel sounds. If you are a native English speaker with a Northern English accent, many of the vowel sounds are comparable to those in contemporary English. The only ones that are particularly difficult are those that go with N, because they lack a modern English equivalent. Just keep it in mind and constantly. The first in here, there, rather. Second is a cat with example cat. Third is a in the French better. The next is a with bed. Next is a prolong the vowel sound while saying bed. In here, the next is e, win, with the example win. And then e, did, it's long, e with long sounds. Next is o, hot. Next is o, prolong the vowel sound while saying hot. Next is u with example full. And then u with long, then example is full. And then is why did try entering the letter E in the word seat while pursing your lips. Some resemble the French letter O too as well. And the last in vowel sounds is Y is similar to the aforementioned, however, try lengthening the vowel sounds. The second in here is Old English consonant sound. Is ch, typically pronounced like the K in king, although curts ch when occurring between or after vowels, it's k or ch. The second is f, placed between vowels or other consonant, as the V in vocal sounds, but when they come before or after a word, they sound like the f in for, v or f. Third is G, sometimes written as like tree, ordinarily pronounced like the J in gold, but when after or in between vowels, use Y, G or J. H, ha. When the word is at the beginning as the H in hand, but as the Ch in lodge when it is in the middle or at the end, H or X. The next is S, similar to Z in sleep when it is between vowels or other voice sounds, but particularly the S in 7 at the start or end of words is or S. Per or in like per or th, like is the th between vowels in cloth or other voice sounds, but particularly the th in thin at the start or end of a word is the p or th. And the next is as in the shapes is, and in here is Ava symbols, and the last is ch, in the ledge ch, with this in symbols in of the edge. Next will be presented by my friend.
Yeah. The next is vocabulary of Old English. First of all, my name is Firda Ayu Nirmala with the last student number 033. And here I'm going to explain about the next topic, which is the vocabulary of Old English. If you look at it, Old English has far fewer borrowed words than present day English. Go up. Yep. Some Old English words that are still recognizable and used in present day English, even though they have slight differences, are gold, saga, or you can, or it means story or narrative. And then there's candle, which means candle. And then there's ripe, which means ripe or mature. And then there's stank, which means stench or stink. And then there's honey, which means honey. And then some Old English words that are still used in only regional dialects and of present days English are nash, or which means afraid of the cold. It came from Northern English. Can you go right, Nafilah? Thank you. Again, yep. This word came from the Old English nash, and then there's whelp, or you can call it, or it's mean puppy. It came from northeast and northwest. It's from the Old English help. And then there's oxter, or you can, or it's mean armpit. It's from present days broad Scots. It came from the Old English osta. And then there is Old English. There are some Old English words that are results of compounding words. There are 4 examples. The first one is shy, which means sea, and ground, which means ground. It became one, and there's a new word called sea ground. And then there's earth, or soil or earth, and urn, which means dwelling or store. It combined and became earthen, or earth dwelling or grave. And then there's dream, combined with craft, or the meaning is an art or skill or science. Then this became new words, which dreamcraft, which is the art of making music. And then the last example is staff, meaning both stick and letter, and then combined with craft, then became staff craft, which means the craft or science of letters, or you can call it grammar. And then the next material will be explained by my friends.
Yes, thank you. So the next subtopic is Old English, a synthetic language. So the main difference between Old English and present day English, or PDE, is that Old English is a synthetic or inflectional, whereas PDE is an analytic or isolating language. So I want to explain about PDE first. So an analytic language is the grammatical function words and phrases indicated by the order in which they appear. However, Old English is a synthetic language that marks grammatical function in a different way. That is by adding an ending on it. It is called an inflection. So the example of present day English is Oswin shot Sigbert. It is clear that Oswin is the one who did the shooting, and Sigbert is the person who was shot. In grammatical terms, Oswin is the subject in the sentence, and Sigbert is the object. And the second example is Sigbert shot Oswin. So the change in word order signals a change in meaning. This time, Sigbert is the subject and Oswin is the object. So for the example of English synthetic language, is imagine that present day English is not an analytic language, but instead a synthetic one. So let's imagine that the way subject of sentence is marked is by adding an X, and the way objects are marked is by adding a Z to the end of the word. For example, shot Oswin Sigbert. It is clear that Oswin is the person who did the shooting because the word Oswin has the inflection X, which is Sigbert is the person who was shot because the word Sigbert has the inflection Z. For the second example, is Sigbert shot Oswin. For the next material, will be explained by my friends.
Yes, thank you. So I will explain about the case, gender, and number in Old English. First case, in Old English, the grammatical function of nouns was indicated by an inflection on the noun in question. Inflections on nouns are sometimes called case endings. You may be familiar with case if you have studied a language such as German or Russian. Old English had 4 cases: the nominative, accusative, genitive, and dative. Words that are the subject of a sentence are said to be in the nominative case. Accusative case applies to the object of a sentence, the thing having something done to it. For example, the cat bit the dog. The cat is nominative and the dog is accusative. The genitive case indicates possession. Old English has possessive pronouns like present day English does, but if you want to make a noun possessive in Old English, then we need to add a specific genitive inflection. For example, India's capital or the capital of India. Meanwhile, the dative case typically indicates the indirect object in a sentence. So in the sentence, I sent Nancy the book. I is the subject because I'm doing the action. The book is the object because it's having the action of being sent. And Nancy is the indirect object because she's affected from me sending the book. Next is gender. Genders in Old English were feminine, masculine, and neuter. Every noun has a grammatical gender. It is just a way categorizing nouns. In the case of Old English, classifying them into 3 groups: feminine, masculine, and neuter. We use she, her, hers when we're talking about some female, that is a girl or a woman. This also implies the masculine gender. We use he, him, or his. And when we talk about inanimate objects like books, laptop, apple, etc., then we use the neuter gender, it. Inanimate object can't have a gender unless you're speaking in French, German, or Spanish. Next is number. Number refers to whether a word is singular or plural. This still remains in present-day English. The singular or plural inflection use would depend on the case and gender of the word in question. When we talk about ourselves, we would say I. When we talk about ourselves with other people, we would say we or us. Next topic will be presented by my friend.
Okay, thank you. Now we come to the next part, which is Old English verb. Just like nouns in Old English, which inflect for case, gender, and number, the verbs in Old English also inflect to mark person and tense. Before we go to the Old English verb, let's first discuss a little bit of present-day English. Excuse me, Nafilah, can you zoom into the present-day English? Yes, thank you. In present-day English, the inflection only happens in the third-person singular form of the verb. For example, he, she, and it are followed by verb plus s or es, like in he walks and she walks. Whereas the irregular verb to be is an exception. It is a different case. We know that to be can be an auxiliary verb, right? It has different form depending on the subject, like the first person singular I uses am, the second person singular you uses are, and the third person singular he, she, it uses is. And it turns out that this inflection lie in Old English, which made us different form of verbs to mark person. Okay, can you move to the left a little bit? Inflection to mark person, right? Okay, thank you. To get more understanding, let's take a look at this example. Here's an example of the various parts of one Old English verb singan, if I'm not mistaken to pronounce it. It means to sing in modern English. Let's take a look at the first example. Each is stand for I. Singan is modified into it's singa. And for the second person, you stands for you. It is changed into you singers, if I'm not mistaken. And the last example is the third person, he, it, and heo. It is changed into he, it, hail into sing up. Yes. Okay. We go on to the next part. The inflection to mark tense. Okay, thank you. To form the past tense form and past participle of most verb in present-day English, we simply add an inflectional ending, as in walk and walk, like we add ed in the last part of the verb. But you may notice that to form the past tense of a verb like sing or drink, we do not add ed as inflectional ending, but instead we change the vowel from sing to sang and from drink to drank. And in grammatical terms, sing is a strong verb, while walk is a weak verb. Like sing and drink is irregular verb, and walk is regular verb. As we know, let's move on to the past participle. Can you zoom in? Okay, thank you. As we know, past tense is different from past participle. Past participle can be a part of verb or it can be an adjective. As a part of verb, past participle always accompanied by to have or other auxiliary verb before. Weak verb from their past tense and past participle by adding ed as the inflectional ending. Strong verbs, on the other hand, inflect in a different way. To form the past participle of a strong verb, either the vowel or the present tense form is changed, or we add en in the last part of the strong verb. And as in present-day English, verb in Old English were either weak or strong. However, there were more strong verbs in Old English than in present-day English. Over time, many of these became weak through process of regularization. Okay, that's all from me. And the next part will be explained by my friend.
Okay, I'm back, and here I'm going to explain about Old English and Scots. Can you zoom in? Thank you. In the 500 Common Eras, Scots and Picts are present in Scotland. Then in 848 Common Eras, both of those dominations are united by the first king of Scots, Kenneth MacAlpin. As the language of Picts died out, it was then replaced by the Celtic language, Celtic. However, the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria extended into Scotland, which resulted in the Old English Northumbrian dialect becoming common on the English-Scottish border. And then in the 19th century, Vikings raids attacked Northumbrian settlements, and eventually Northumbrian dialects were influenced by the Scandinavian dialects of the Vikings. Then, during the reign of Malcolm III of Scotland, he used English as opposed to Gaelic as the language of his royal court, and because of that, Gaelic never achieved the prestigious position it would need to survive as the language of Scotland. Can you go right? Okay, thank you. In summary, the Old English language became the language of Scotland, and contemporary Scots developed ultimately from Anglian rather than Saxon varieties of Old English, which is the reasons why Scots differ from the present day. I think that's all from me. The next material will be going to present by my friend.
Okay, thank you, Firda. Okay, for the next topic is Old English dialectical differences. So, quote from Margaret and Mercer, 1972. Most of dialect differences that can be noticed in Old English concern the sound of the particular variety in question. So, in Old English, that words which begin with an initial palatal consonants are followed by diphthongs, but in West Saxon, followed by monophthongs in other dialects. For example, in West Saxon, we spelling given, that like to give, given, to give, and castle. And in Kentish Mercian and Northumbrian, the spelling like given and caster. Okay, so can you slide in right? Okay, thank you. So one way of investigating dialectical differences is to compare texts which exist in more than one dialect. For example, is Kate 19. So you can see the text on page 46 in your book. At very basic level, different spellings suggest different pronunciation. We can note, for example, the tendency for diphthongs to be used in West Saxon, where monophthongs are preferred in Northumbrian. The Northumbrian dialect contributed much to development of Scots, which is just one reason why an awareness of dialectical variation is important. We are to account for the development of English over time. That's all for me. Maybe Firda, you can close this presentation.
I think that's all from us. We hope our presentation can enlighten you more about understanding of Old English and the varieties of Old English. We are deeply sorry if there are mistakes that we made before. Thank you for your attention. See you in class and goodbye.